now we are live, sir.
But there are no viewers yet, so we need to reduce this and get it into a form जिसमें कि कुछ लिख सकें.
Okay, आप सर
लिखने के लिए कहाँ पे करना होगा?
वो जैसे आप अभी लिख रहे थे. Okay.
नहीं वहाँ नहीं. Using the
okay
this one.
Okay sir.
माइक माइक तो नहीं चाहिए होगा ना? तो उस पे होगा ना, तो that will take care of it.
मैं स्क्रीन शेयर करूँ सर?
स्क्रीन शेयर अगर करेंगे कुछ कर रहे हैं व्यूअर्स आए. उनको देखने में दिक्कत हो रही है ना?
नो सर, मेरी हाइट थोड़ी सी
कम है तो इसीलिए तो इसके लिए वो ले लो ना तुम.
सर जी, अभी आप जो भी लिखेंगे वो लोग देख.
ठीक है,
मैं एक बार वहां से जाके चेक करती हूँ.
चेक करके आओ.
सर लाइव हो गया है.
It's working.
I think, hi guys, let's get started. I'll just check whether you could hear something, if you can hear me. Did you, or rather, did you hear me? Okay, it looks like it's working. Somebody said good evening to me, so that I think it's working. Yes, I'm able to see, sir. So I think now things are in control. You are able to hear me as well as see what I'm trying to write for you on a shared screen. So I think that's what we'll do. Okay. So where do we get started? Guys, good evening to all of you. And thanks for watching and thanks for being with us in this course on Principles of Construction Management. Most of the lectures are over. I think we are heading to an exam now. Day after tomorrow or after the day, just the day after that. And I wish you all the best for that. And I can see that anxiety catching up with you. So now let me see, what are the questions like? The questions are, there is a scribble something. Nakwi, good evening, sir. Shahwaz Nakwi says, good evening, Shahwaz. Aruna says, good evening. Aruna says, yes, she can hear me. That's good. So I think we'll get started with our business. Now, as far as our business is concerned, the first question that I would like to take up right now is this question from Vinod, and then there's a part of that question is also from Syed Nakvi. I hope you guys are there. That question basically deals with this issue of compressive strength of concrete and the acceptance criteria. Now, that is a very tricky question. In fact, if I knew the answer, I would have been able to give it to you very clearly. But since I'm not very clear, but let me explain to you the spirit of the provision in 456 as I understand it. Okay. So my understanding is that there are two concepts involved. One is there is an individual sample, and then there is a group of 4. Okay. Now, what constitutes a sample is something which we talked about. We said that if you take 3 cubes, take the average of these 3, and that single value constitutes the sample. Okay. Now, the way I would also like you to understand this concept is the following. There is an FCK here. So that is the characteristic compressive strength that we are talking about. Now, what is important to understand is that no matter what kind of this normal distribution and so on that we talk about, and we allow that, okay, 5% will fall below the expected value and all that, the fact of it remains that no individual sample can be allowed to fall far below this characteristic strength. Now, what is the meaning of this far below the characteristic strength? That is where this kind of a line is drawn here, which says that, let's say, FCK -3 or -4 or whatever that line may be. So an individual sample cannot come here. This will be unacceptable. Okay. So that is how this thing is. But this is acceptable because it is not below this dotted line, which means that so long as you are below FCK, but not below FCK -3, you are all right. It is acceptable, except that it does not pass. The individual sample is acceptable, but the group of 4 is required to pass acceptability. Now, as far as that is concerned, what they've done is they've drawn another line here, which is at, let's say, FCK +3 or 4. And that group of 4 has to be above this line. That's the way I understand it. So what is being done is that if you are above, so long as you are above this line, as far as the group of 4 is concerned, you are safe. That is the acceptance of the concrete. If individual comes here, that is unacceptable. So if you come here, what it really means is that that's a warning sign to you that something is going wrong with your quality control procedures and you're not able to produce the right kind of concrete, and therefore you should produce better concrete. And better concrete means that if you get something here, there should be other values somewhere here such that this average turns out to be greater than FCK +3. Okay, so that is how we have to interpret this criteria. That's the way I understand it, that individuals cannot fall below a certain number and the group of 4 has to be higher than FCK +3. The idea is that, okay, this thing is not directly related to this discussion here, which is based on the normal distribution of the strengths, that you will get a lot of values in this range, but in order to be very sure that 95% of the values are higher than this value, you should clear this FCK +3 or 4. So I don't want to get into a discussion of relating your acceptance criteria to this normal distribution and 1.65 times sigma and so on, but you should understand that the fact that we are allowing certain number of samples to fall below FCK means that as far as this line is concerned, we have to allow some samples here, except that my engineering judgment tells me that this is not acceptable, and my engineering judgment tells me that, well, this can be tolerated. So it's a matter of tolerating it and then finally accepting it. Okay, so I think I'll stop this discussion at this, and let me see if I can go to a next screen. If I want to talk about this once again, we'll do that. Okay, so now let me come to the next question, which is by Selvam. Selvam says, who is the best role player of the construction industry? I mean, I don't really know what this question is. Selvam, if you're online with us, please clarify this a little bit, and then I'll probably try to answer your question. And in the meantime, let me go to Syed Naqvi's questions, and there are lots of them, Syed. You are doing this course very seriously, I can see that. Except that you asked a lot of questions, which is very difficult because I don't really have with me, Syed, the questions in the assignments, and I was not really prepared to discuss each question in a given assignment. So what I'll do is I'll have the TAs in the office take these questions and we'll try to discuss them in the forum. So that I think I'll try to do maybe sometime tomorrow, but let me read the questions. First, the assignment 6, question number 9. First, the worker performed the unsafe act of stacking cement bags and stacked more than 20 bags as per this because shall not be stacked more than 10 bags. Due to this act, the condition became unsafe. Therefore, the accident caused by both unsafe. How the answer can be only unsafe condition. As an inspector, we cannot ignore the unsafe act which make the unsafe condition. And in question, it did not mention that we have to analyze the cause of the most immediate effect. See, this unsafe condition, unsafe act kind of a situation is very difficult to differentiate at times. You are right in saying that as an inspector, we cannot ignore the unsafe act. But the fact of it also remains that as far as the immediate action, and that's what you are also saying, that as far as the accident is concerned, it occurred because the cement bags had been stacked up to an unacceptable height. Now, who had allowed it to do that? So as far as the person involved in that accident is concerned, for him, it's an unsafe condition. He did not perform the act. So one way which perhaps I would like to take is that as far as unsafe act and unsafe condition, the differentiation which I would like to make, Syed, is the following. If the worker who's involved in that accident, he or she performs an act which is per se unsafe, okay, then it will be attributed to an unsafe act. So if the person is not wearing a helmet and driving a bike and there is an accident and the guy gets a head injury, then to me it's an unsafe act. But if there is a situation where something has happened on account of something else and the person who's getting involved in the accident was not involved in it, was not directly responsible for creating that condition, then it's an unsafe condition as far as the accident is concerned. Except that, yes, you're right. The unsafe condition arose because somebody else had performed some unsafe acts. So that is where I would like to draw the line that, okay, as an inspector, you cannot ignore the unsafe act. That's true. But as far as the accident is concerned, that was caused because for that person, there was an unsafe condition that was prevailing at that particular site. Okay. So, well, as far as the question is concerned, what was mentioned and what was not mentioned, we'll probably read it and get back to you. But I think that's what I'll try to basically say. Okay, so in concern of confined space, manhole will be right, but if the concern is of fall protection, then again runway will be the odd one out. So there may be two answers. I do not remember the question, so I think we'll take a look at the question. I think you understand this, and I think Syed, you are an engineer yourself. I think you have a certain amount of experience, which is telling in your answer. So I think it really doesn't matter which is the right answer, which is the wrong answer. It's oftentimes a matter of discussion, and there could be spaces where there is a little bit of an ambiguity, and we'll just live with it. I mean, a mark here, I mean, as far as grading is concerned, a mark here and a mark there will possibly not make a difference to you. I mean, if it really does, we'll probably look into it that way. But let me look at the question and then we'll get back to you. Okay. So now question number 3 from you, Syed Naqvi, is about this result of compressive strength, table 11. I think that's what we have already discussed in some detail. Question number 8, assignment 8, question 7. The course of action suggested by the arbitrators clearly entails the action to be performed, and also the dispute is regarding the nature of soft and nature of soil, soft rock versus hard soil, and is not about the measurement and rate of the soil. If the arbitrator clearly indicates the work to be performed by both parties, and being a civil engineer it can be done by both, then why the award is invalid? I don't remember again the question, but my memory of that question really is that the arbitrator was, he did not do that job. I think arbitration why do we do arbitration? Arbitration is done because there is a dispute and the arbitrator is supposed to solve it. The arbitrator is not expected to, and therefore should not, just give guidelines कि ऐसे solve कर लीजिए. I mean, I hope you understand some amount of Hindi. So ऐसे solve कर लीजिए. That is not what arbitration is about. Arbitration is about solving the problem. So therefore, in that particular question, what I remember is that the award was kind of not very clear. That's what I remember, but I will look into it and probably make a note of it and put it on the forum. So I think that is what my situation right now is, and I don't see any more questions which are available here. If you are a person from, let me see if there are any more questions. Can we figure out somehow what are the questions? If there are any more questions. I just scribbled something. Yes, okay. Did you hear me? Yes, that's going on. So please explain grout and grouting in a simple way. That's a question coming. Okay, now there are some questions here. At least there's one. Aruna says, thank you, sir. Shahnawaz Naqvi says, good evening. I think these things were happening earlier. Now there is a question from Amit Goyal which says, please explain grout and grouting in simple way. Now that's a very tricky question. What do you expect me to explain in a simple way? What is a grout? See, I mean, do you have an image? See, I always believe, that we have to have a kind of a picture in mind, and that helps us understand what we are talking about. Okay, so when we talk of, let's say, gold, no matter what you think or what you know about gold, but there is an image that gold is a precious metal, it is glittering, and so on and so forth, can be made into jewelry and so on. So if you have to have that image, if you don't have that image, it's difficult to understand. So now from that point of view, let me ask you, Amit, what is the kind of image that you have when you think of the word grout? The image that I have, I'm going to share with you. Grout is like a liquid, except that it is not water. It is a little more viscous than water. It probably has some more solids. So it's a solid suspension. So a grout, if you want to call it, you can call it a paste. Except that a paste, again, it's a matter of discussion, that a paste versus a grout, there are discussions that we can do. A paste, what is the simplest paste that you think of? The toothpaste. So a toothpaste, again, is not a liquid, but it's not solid. But if you press it through a small opening, it emerges, it can probably take the certain shape and so on and so forth, right? Whereas a grout is more liquid than a paste, except that in our cement, concrete, and this kind of stuff, no, Amit, it's not concrete. That's what I'm coming to. Cement and water is paste. Paste plus sand is mortar. Mortar plus coarse aggregate is concrete. So if you look at it from that point of view, the only liquid component of concrete is water. And the water, the viscosity of water, the liquidity of water, the flowability of water, whatever those properties are, get modified when we add some cement to it. And in fact, you can think of it in terms of a batter. I don't know how many of you know that. I mean, like if you make pakodi kind of stuff, so you make besan and you add besan to water, right? So that besan and water give you a paste. It's a batter, which is like a grout. Okay, so that is what is a grout. A grout is a paste with a certain amount of cement in it. In this kind of, in a situation that we talked about, we talked of grouting is basically a cement paste which has flowable consistency. So you're not talking of paste of the type of toothpaste, but we are talking of a grout which is more flowable than that. Now, where do we use this kind of grouts as far as construction is concerned? One of the places where we use it is using grouting. And grouting is a technique by which we push the grout somewhere. Now, where do we want to push these kind of materials? The kind of discussion that I think we did in this course was in relation to pre-stressed concrete, where we said that there is a pre-stressing duct So what we had done was that if I go back to the kind of a picture, what we had said was, here is a pre-stressing duct. Here are some kind of, let's say, cables or whatever it is. There are these strands. So it will come. I think it takes about 5 seconds to come. So I have some people here who are monitoring the situation as it is evolving. All right. Good. So there is this duct, and these are the strands. And there is this, let me see if I can change the color of this thing somehow. Can we change the color of this? Oh, I can change the color right here, right there. So all this space here is free space. Now we don't want this space to remain free. And what we do is that after this situation has been done, that is, we have the duct and we have the strand, we want to fill this with grout. So this process of filling this space is what is called grouting. Okay. Now, because this space is, I mean, the way I've shown it, it's a very bad picture, but I suppose you can look at a book and try to figure out a better picture of that. But the fact of it remains that in order to make sure that over a 20-meter span or a 25-meter span, because this duct is not a small piece of, it's not small in length. I mean, it could be 20 meters, 25 meters. So in order to make sure that whatever you're pushing in here as grout at one end of the, so if you look at the length part of it, if whether you're pushing the grout from here or there is an intermediate point where you're trying to push the grout from, you want to make sure that the grout that comes in here, and this is where your strands are, all over the place it should reach. Therefore, there are issues relating to what kind of grout you should use. What are the kind of parameters that you should prescribe to ensure that this is a good quality grout? Please go ahead and use that grout, and not a grout which does not meet the requirements. So what those requirements could be, they could be in terms of flowability, that's one. They could be in terms of segregation resistance, because at the end of it, what we are doing is, we have a suspension of cement in water, and that's what is grout. And if we push that with a certain amount of pressure, and that's how we do it. I mean, we don't just let the grout flow. The grout flows through these narrow spaces under pressure. So when we push this under pressure, it should not happen that the cement particles get deposited and only the water goes out somewhere else. So in order that these things don't happen, we have a situation where we can have this thing, properties such as flowability, segregation resistance, maybe shrinkage, and finally bleeding, strength. All these parameters could be assigned as expected properties of grout. Okay, so that is the question that I have answered for you. Let me see. I hope Amit, it was Amit who had asked this question, isn't it? Yes, Amit had asked that question. So I hope, Amit, this is good enough. Concrete, we don't do that. Concrete, when we pump concrete, we don't try to push it through narrow spaces. I mean, apart from this application, which is in pre-stressed concrete, grout is also used sometimes to fill cracks in concrete. That is an in repair kind of systems. So either we use cement, then once we understand that this is grout and grouting, then we can always discuss the situation whether the grout is cementitious or non-cementitious. There can be epoxy-based grouts, which means that they don't have any cements, but they have epoxies which will harden. So there is a fluid, you're pushing that fluid into a crack, and over a period of time, or just after some time, maybe 1 hour, half an hour, whatever it is, it will harden. So that's the kind of system which we use. So now let me try to see, there is another question here. Can we carry probability tables in the exam? Now my answer to that question, Kapil, is that if there is a probability table which is required, we will make it available to you. If it is not required, it will not be made available. And therefore, you don't have to carry anything. You just have to go there with whatever tools that you need, and you should be able to answer the questions. If there are any additional basic information or tables, whatever it is required, formulae, it will be provided to you in some way or form. Okay, I wish you all the best on that. Then there is a question which talks of from Muhammad Sheikh, which says, please explain the repayment used to pay the principal first, in which the sum of interest till year 12 is such and such. Why we need to subtract the principal amount of 10? Now, I really do not know, Muhammad Sheikh, what you are talking about. So I think what we'll do is, I have with me the TA, Sahil, who is going to be around with us, I mean, for the next couple of days as well. And we'll try to handle this and take it up in the forum and try to see that what is going on. What the principle we were trying to do, what I remember as far as the question is, as far as this whole discussion is concerned, was that I think we shared the Excel sheet with them as to how to do the calculations, right? So when you share the Excel sheet, then you know how exactly it's being done. And if you have a particular question on that, then we will discuss this. Mohammed Sheikh, I think I'll not be able to answer this question because I'm not prepared for it. I don't want to answer each individual question arising out of an assignment. I can understand your anxiety coming to the exam, that, okay, tomorrow is the exam, you want the answers, but we'll probably answer all these questions before the exam. Today is still Thursday, so you have Friday and Saturday. We'll do that, okay? So Amit says, sir, can we directly cast the beam instead of doing grouting? So why it is done so? Why is it done so? Now, Amit, there are two ways. I think I'm not so sure whether you have a background, let's say, in pre-stress concrete, and that without that it's difficult perhaps to follow this discussion. In pre-stress concrete, and that's where we came from. In pre-stress concrete, there are two ways of doing pre-stress concrete construction. Let me just try to see if I can help you with drawing that picture again and going back to the drawing board. Okay. Now, one way of doing pre-stress construction is that you take this steel strand, okay? You extend it by a certain amount. So this is the extension that you've done. Hold it here for some time, okay? And then you cast concrete around it, right? So this is extended steel. It's not the natural length of steel, right? Now, this is being held here. So obviously, if we don't have the concrete and you release this hold from here, it will go back to this position. Now, if that doesn't happen and the concrete hardens, and then you relieve this, so what will be the net result? Steel would want to go back here. Concrete would not allow it to go back here, and therefore the net result would be something is gone, and therefore the net result would be that the whole system will get stuck somewhere here, which means that concrete would have got, what is the natural length of concrete? The natural length of concrete is this much, and the natural length of steel is only this much. And what is the equilibrium? The equilibrium has been reached somewhere here in between, right? So as far as concrete is concerned, it will experience a shortening, which is this much. And as far as the steel is concerned, it will experience a lengthening, which is so much. So this is the whole idea of pre-stressing of concrete. So the concrete will be stressed in this manner, and so will steel. And all this is happening before there is service load on the structure. So the concrete is stressed before the service load, and it helps us improve the performance of concrete beams, especially when it comes to flexural loads. Now I'm explaining it at this level, and I think we'll just have to stop it there and move forward. So this is where we don't use grouting, because the steel here, the steel bar here, the steel strand or whatever it is in contact with is in direct contact with the surrounding concrete. And this is called pre-stressed concrete construction. That is pre-stressed, pre-tensioned, pre-stressed concrete. So it is pre-tensioned steel leading to pre-stressed concrete. Now, as against this, there is the post-tensioned pre-stress concrete. Now that is what we were trying to talk about in the previous example, where we have a concrete beam like this. We leave a hole in this beam, and then we pass a strand here. And as this, so long as we pass the strand here and leave it there, nothing is happening. So the concrete still remains where it is. What we try to do is fix this place here and then try to pull this in some way or form. So we try to apply tension to this steel wire and leave it at this, either through a nut or a bolt or whatever, whichever way you want to apply the tension. So once you're doing that, you're extending the steel and pushing the concrete back and introducing this amount of shortening in this concrete. So you are doing post-tensioning of your steel and introducing pre-stress in concrete. Now this pre-word is coming from the fact that it is before the action of service load. So the grouting business is important only when you're doing post-tension pre-stress construction, and that is where you have this duct and this strands and this free space which has to be grouted. Okay, so I think that is what should be the answer to the question from Amit, which was about why can't we cast the beam directly? We can of course cast the beam directly. We don't have to use grout. In that case, we are doing pre-tension, pre-stress concrete construction, and of course we don't need any grouting. Okay, so Kapil says thanks. Now, was there a question from Kapil which I answered, for which he's thanking me? No, there was no question. Huh? Probability table was there from him. That's right. So I have answered your question, Kapil. I'm happy that you understood the answer. So I think there are no more questions. So I think we can almost close with you guys. How many of these people are here? How many of the students are watching this right now?
13.
13. That's not bad. So if you guys have nothing to say, then I'll probably... Okay, Amit says thanks. That's good, Amit. I wish you all the best. Kapil, thanks you. I wish you all the best. So if there are no more questions, I think there are some questions. Sahil, we'll have to... There were questions from a guy called Syed Naqvi, was it?
Mohammed Sheikh.
No, Muhammad Sheikh was, there was a question. There was a series of other questions from Syed Naqvi. Please explain column 2 of table 11. I mean, what is the column 2, Syed? I mean,
This is for IS 456.
IS 456, yeah, column 2. So in fact, that I think I explained it to you, Syed. Do you really want to go over it again? What is there at in column 2 of IS 456? Column 2 of section 11. Oh, I think it refers to group of 4
non-consecutive,
non-consecutive, non-overlapping 4 masla hai. I think that is a difficult question. I think I will not be able to answer that question because I've already answered what I could. But one of these days, I think I'll write an answer to your question. Okay. So I think that is what you guys have said. Sahil, can you see the questions from Syed Naqvi? There are these questions about assignment 6, question 9, and question 4 about confined spaces and so on. So I've assured him that we'll write some answers to or some comments on those questions. So in fact, I can see from you, from this table that I have, guys, that one of you is an employed person. The second person says faculty. There are 2 of you. Well, Syed Naqvi is an engineer. So I think all of you are people who are working in the field. So you have a reasonable amount of experience, and I'm happy that you are following this course, and I hope it was useful to you in that sense. I've already answered some of it. We'll discuss it. So it's about 6:35 just now, and if you don't have any question, okay, there is. Please explain something. Can we say goodbye?
Just a second, the camera. You are sharing the screen. The camera.
अच्छा उसको कैमरा नहीं आ रहा था उसमें.
Yes.
So it's either the camera or the screen. Is
Yes.
that how it works?
To stop it, that stop broadcasting.
Yeah. Sorry. एक और क्वेश्चन आया सर.
Oh yeah.
Pre-stress and post-stress result in reduction of concrete strength.
Deduction strength, how? Because it's most likely to apply force. I think, Amit, I don't want to kind of simplify things beyond a certain point, and I think we'll stop it at that. You try to take a look at some of the basic books around this pre-stressed concrete area, and then you'll probably have an understanding as to what goes on. But having said that, I would only like to mention to you that in this discussion that we had on pre-tension pre-stressed as well as post-tension pre-stressed, in both these cases, very often we require high strength concrete, because obviously the kind of steel that we have and the kind of tension that we introduce in those pre-stressing strands, and we let it go, the amount of force that it generates on the concrete, if it is normal strength concrete or if it is low strength concrete, it will fail. Therefore, as far as pre-stressed concrete construction is concerned, it's often a requirement that the strength is more than what is required for normal reinforced concrete construction. I leave it to you to find out from different codes and different specifications to find out that what is the minimum strength of or minimum characteristic strength of concrete that they require for pre-stressed construction. Okay, what is the minimum strength that is required for reinforced concrete construction? The code probably says that you should use at least M20 concrete for all kinds of reinforced concrete construction. But for pre-stressed concrete, I'm not sure whether M20 concrete is allowed. You'll probably have to use a higher strength concrete. Okay, and in fact, for both cases, pre-tensioned as well as post-tensioned, there is a minimum amount of strength of concrete should have gained, especially if you're talking of pre-stressed pre-tensioning. You're casting the concrete that is no strength, and it will go to a certain strength, yes. But at what time should you leave the hold that you have on steel and you transfer this stress onto concrete? There has to be some minimum strength that the concrete should have. Otherwise, the concrete will simply get crushed. So you are right that there is an issue of concrete strength. And if you're coming from that side of, from that point of view, yes, your concern is valid that concrete has to have a certain amount of strength. But it does not result in deduction of or any kind of reduction as far as concrete strength is concerned. No, it does not. Okay. With that, you'll have to read a little bit more about pre-stressed concrete, and then we can probably talk about it in some other course. On this issue, I don't want to get into the forum, because the forum is basically on this course, which is on principles of construction management, and I don't think this is really a construction management issue. This is more of a concrete technology, especially relating to pre-stressed concrete kind of discussion. So I think I'm not going to do too much of it in a forum, and leave it to Amit to do some homework on his own. Okay, I think we will say bye-bye. Thank you so much for being with us. It has been a pleasure talking to you, listening to some of the questions. I'm sorry I didn't answer all your questions. I'm sure you're disappointed, but I'm going to make it up by answering your questions on the forum either tonight or maybe more like tomorrow than today. Okay, so you can go ahead and have.
Explain the repayment used to.
There's another question. If possible, please try to explain the repayment used to pay the principal first. At least one case, there's an ambiguity in it. Have any negative marking? I don't think we do negative marking at all. No, we don't do negative marking. This question is coming from somebody called Picasso Sadhu Khan. Where are you from, Picasso? Do you can you just let me know? As far as the question is concerned, I've already answered it. There's no question. There's no negative marking. But I would, by curiosity, I would just like to know where you are from. Okay. So if you can answer that question, I look forward to hearing from you. And as far as this principle of the repayment discussion is concerned, I don't know where the ambiguity is arising from. I'll probably look at that Excel sheet once again and get back and try to make some comments on it. But I hope the basic principle is understood by you. If you borrow 100 rupees today or 1,000 rupees today, and you try to say that, okay, I'm going to pay it to you over a period of time, then how is the interest and the borrowed principal, how are these two entities handled? Okay. One way is that, okay, if you borrow 1,000, in the first year it attracts, let's say, an interest of 100 rupees. Then if you want to make a single payment and clear your loan, you should pay 1,100. Now you don't want to pay 1,100. You want to say that, look, please take, I have only 120 rupees with me. So you pay 120. Now the question is basically, where does that 120 go? One system would be that I take 100 rupees of interest, which has accrued. I say that, look, you paid me 120, therefore 100 is being used to service the loan. You understand that point? That 100 is the interest that accrued on the 1,000 at 10%. You give me 120. Out of that 120, I take out 100 rupees because that was the interest. And the 20 rupees which is left, that alone goes to service your principal amount. So that now principal amount becomes 1,000 minus 20, which is 980. So on 980, the next time around, if you want to pay the whole thing one shot, you should pay 1,000, whatever, 989, how much was it? 980, right? So 980 plus 98. And you again come back with 120 rupees. Now this time what will happen? Because your interest was only 98, I'll take 98 out of that. And this time 22 rupees will go towards your principal service. That you are reducing your principal from 980 by 22. So it comes to 958. So this is how it goes on and on. Another model of working this would be that, look, please don't bother about the interest. You take the 120 from me and you reduce the principal itself. So let's start with 1,000 again. So 1,000 attracted an interest of 100. You pay me 120 and I take the 120 out of your principal, which means the principal that is going to attract interest in the next year will simply become 1,000 minus 120, which is 880. So now what is the payable? What is the liability for the next year? 880 of principal, but plus 88 of the interest, plus the 100 rupees of interest which was paid last time, which was the interest last time. We have simplified the matter to some extent by saying that 100 is not attracting any interest, right? So that 100, the interest component doesn't attract interest. Okay. So that is how you can, if you keep paying 120 within 8 years or 9 years or whatever it is, you would have cleared your principal. Okay. And then there can be models in between. That is 50% of this, 50% of that, and so on. So in fact, as far as the money lending business is concerned, the money lending business basically works on this principle that they hike the interest rate and they make you pay the interest first. And then that's how your debt keeps mounting. You never pay your principal. Soft loans and all that kind of stuff, they allow you to pay a certain amount of principal along with the repayments that happen. Okay. So I think that is what the basic principle or the philosophy that I was trying to show. And the extreme case of it is that, okay, you take a loan of 1,000, the interest is 100, you keep paying 50 or 60, nothing will happen. that means it's an infinite loop. So unless you are able to service your interest at least, you will never be able to get out of the loop of making the repayment. Okay, so that is the principle that I was trying to make. I think if we look at the Excel sheet once again and see if any more clarification is required. So I think that with that, we'll probably say bye-bye. I think we will close with your permission. How many of these guys are still here? The 14 people are still there? Okay, so I think if they have no questions, then I think I'll wish you all the best and have a good evening. At least that's what the time in India is. It's good evening to you. It's about 6:45. I'll sign off. Goodbye and good evening. And I wish you the best for the exam. As a small typing mistake, pardon me for that. Bye-bye.